Admiral Marcus Webb walked through the halls of the biggest spaceship he had ever seen. The walls stretched up so high he could barely see the ceiling. Strange creatures from across the galaxy filled every corner. Some had 4 arms, others had tentacles instead of legs. A few looked like walking trees, and some glowed with their own light. All of them stared at him as he passed. Webb wore his best uniform. The blue fabric had every medal he had earned in 20 years of service. His boots clicked on the metal floor as he walked toward the great chamber. He kept his face calm, but inside his heart was beating fast. Today would change everything. The chamber doors opened with a sound like thunder. Inside, the room was so big that Webb felt like an ant. Thousands of alien beings sat in rows that went up and up until they disappeared in shadows. At the front sat 12 creatures behind a curved desk. These were the leaders of the Galactic Empire. Webb walked to the center of the room. His footsteps echoed in the silence. When he stopped, a spotlight hit him from above. He stood alone in the bright light while thousands of eyes watched him. Chancellor Vextar rose from his chair. He was tall and thin, with skin like green metal. His voice boomed through speakers hidden in the walls. "Human," Vextar said the word like it tasted bad. "You stand before the High Council of the Galactic Empire. Your species has been judged." Webb said nothing. He had been told not to speak until asked a direct question. "For too long, humans have spread through space like a disease," Vextar continued. "You claim worlds that belong to the Empire. You refuse to pay the taxes all species must pay. You act like you are special." Laughter filled the chamber. It started with a few aliens and grew until the whole room shook with the sound. Webb stood still in his circle of light. "The Empire has decided to be kind," Vextar said when the laughter died down. "We offer you a choice. Pull back to your home system. Stay on Earth and the planets around your sun. Pay your taxes like everyone else. Do this and your species will live." "And if we refuse?" Webb asked. More laughter exploded from the seats. This time it was louder and lasted longer. "If you refuse," Vextar smiled, showing teeth like glass, "we will destroy every human in the galaxy. Your colonies will burn. Your ships will be turned to dust. Your people will be nothing but a story other species tell their children." The chamber fell silent. Everyone waited for the human to beg for mercy. Webb reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and his voice suddenly filled the entire chamber through the same speakers the Chancellor had used. "I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Space Navy." His voice was calm and clear. "I speak for all of humanity. We have heard your offer." He paused and looked around the room. His eyes met those of aliens who had never seen a human before today. "Here is our counteroffer," Webb said. "You have 72 standard hours to remove all Imperial forces from systems claimed by humanity. Take your ships, your stations, your tax collectors, and leave. Do this and your empire will survive." The silence lasted for 3 heartbeats. Then the laughter began again. This time it was so loud that Webb felt it in his chest. Aliens pointed at him with claws, tentacles, and appendages he had no names for. "And if we refuse?" Vextar asked, copying Webb's earlier words. Webb's face remained calm, but something in his eyes changed. It was small, but every creature in the chamber felt it. The laughter began to fade. "If you refuse," Webb said quietly, "we will not stop until your empire is nothing but ashes drifting in space." The laughter died completely. The chamber was so quiet that Webb could hear the air moving through the vents. "You threaten us?" Vextar's voice rose in disbelief. "One human threatens the entire Galactic Empire." "I do not threaten," Webb said. "I warn. There is a difference." He put the device back in his pocket and looked up at the 12 leaders on their high platform. "Your empire has existed for 1,000 years, Webb said. "You have conquered hundreds of species. You think you know everything about war, but you have never fought humanity. You do not know what we become when our families are threatened." He began walking toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. 72 hours, Webb called over his shoulder. "When that time is up, we will give you a demonstration of what humanity can do. After that demonstration, we will not offer mercy again." The chamber doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Vextar began to laugh. The sound was sharp and ugly. "Did you hear that?" he asked the other council members. "The human thinks his tiny species can threaten us. They have what, maybe 50 ships? We have 50,000. Should we take his warning seriously?" asked Counselor Drexman, whose blue tentacles twitched with worry. Seriously? Vexstar laughed harder. Look at the numbers. They are one species on a few dozen worlds. We are an empire of 1,000 species on 1,000,000 worlds. What can they possibly do to us? Then what do we do? Asked another counselor. Vexstar's laughter stopped. His glass teeth gleamed in the chamber's light. We show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens the empire, he said. Launch immediate attacks on 3 human colonies. Pick the biggest ones. Turn them into glass. Let every species see what happens to those who do not respect imperial power. Within hours, imperial fleets were moving toward human space. The aliens in the chamber had laughed at Webb's warning. They saw humans as just another weak species to be crushed under the Empire's boot. They had no idea they were about to learn why humans were the only species in the galaxy that had never been successfully conquered. The attack orders went out across imperial space. 3 human colonies would burn before the humans. 72 hours were up. The Empire was about to discover that some warnings should be taken very seriously. Webb's ship left the Imperial flagship and jumped to hyperspace. As the stars stretched into lines around him, he activated his communication system. Command, this is Admiral Webb, he said into the microphone. The Empire has chosen war. Begin preparations for full activation. The voice that answered him was calm and professional. Understood, Admiral. All Lazarus protocols are standing by. Shall we begin the countdown? Webb looked out at the stars rushing past his ship. Soon some of those stars would go dark forever. Begin countdown, he said, and may God forgive us for what we are about to do. The first attack came at dawn on New Harmony Colony. Commander Jake Sullivan was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. Through his office window, he could see the peaceful farms that covered the valley. Families were just starting their day, children heading to school, farmers checking their crops. Then the sky caught fire. Imperial warships dropped out of hyperspace like falling meteors. Their weapons lit up the morning sky with streams of deadly energy. The first shots hit the colony's shield generators, turning them into clouds of metal and flame. All units, this is Sullivan. He spoke into his communicator while running toward the command center. Execute evacuation plan, Delta. This is not a drill. The evacuation plan had been practiced 100 times. Every colonist knew where to go and what to do. As the Imperial ships began bombing the surface, thousands of people ran toward the underground shelters. But Jake knew something the attacking aliens did not know. The evacuation was not meant to save lives, though it would do that too. It was meant to clear the area for what came next. Deep beneath New Harmony's main settlement, machines that had been sleeping for 10 years woke up. Dr. Lisa Morgan had built these machines in secret, following plans that came from the highest levels of human government. The colonists thought they were mining equipment. The Empire thought New Harmony was just a farming world. They were both wrong. Underground systems are online, reported Sergeant Gary Price from the bunker control room. All civilians are clear of target zones. Jake watched through the command center's cameras as Imperial troops began landing on the surface. They moved in perfect formations, their weapons ready to kill anyone they found. Activate Dead Hand Protocol, Jake ordered. Sir, are you sure? Gary asked. Once we start this, there's no going back. Jake watched as an Imperial soldier kicked down the door of a house where the Miller family had lived for 5 years. The alien pointed his weapon at the family pictures on the wall and fired, destroying them for no reason except cruelty. I'm sure, Jake said. Light them up. The ground beneath New Harmony began to shake. Hidden doors opened across the colony, and machines rose from underground chambers. They looked like mining equipment, but they were something else entirely. The first Imperial soldier to die never saw what hit him. A beam of pure energy struck him from below and he simply vanished. Then another soldier disappeared and another. What is happening? The Imperial commander screamed over his radio. Where is this fire coming from? His answer came in the form of 100 weapons rising from the ground like metal flowers reaching for the sun. Each one locked onto an Imperial target and fired. The battle for New Harmony lasted exactly 12 minutes. When it was over, every Imperial ship was either destroyed or running for hyperspace. Not a single human soldier had fired a shot. The same scene played out on 2 other human colonies. At Riverside Settlement, the defense systems were hidden inside the irrigation network. At New Denver, they were built into the mountains themselves. The Empire had attacked 3 human colonies expecting easy victories. Instead, they had run into a trap that had been 20 years in the making. On Earth, President Helen Carter sat in her office reading the reports. 3 Imperial fleets destroyed. 0 human casualties. The hidden weapons systems had worked perfectly. Her secretary, Nancy Wright, brought her a cup of tea and a worried look. "Ma'am, the alien news networks are already talking about the battles," Nancy said. "They're calling it impossible. They want to know how we did it." Helen smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Let them wonder," she said. "Open a communication channel to the entire galaxy. It's time for our response." An hour later, Helen's face appeared on every screen in human space and beyond. The signal was so strong that it punched through Imperial jamming and reached every species in the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," Helen began, her voice calm and clear. "I am President Helen Carter of the United Human Colonies. Today, the Galactic Empire attacked 3 of our peaceful settlements. They did this to make an example of us, to show other species what happens when you do not bow to Imperial power." She paused and looked directly into the camera. The example they made was not the one they intended. Admiral Webb gave them 72 hours to withdraw from human space. They chose to attack us instead. This was their mistake. The image behind Helen changed to show the wreckage of Imperial ships floating in space around New Harmony. The Galactic Empire believes that might makes right. They think their bigger fleets and older technology make them unbeatable. Today they learned something important about humanity. We do not fight fair. We fight to win. The image changed again, showing more destroyed Imperial ships. For 20 years we have been preparing for this war. While the Empire grew fat and lazy on the taxes of conquered species, we built weapons they cannot imagine. We planned strategies they cannot counter. We prepared for a fight they cannot win. Helen leaned forward and her voice grew colder. The Empire wanted to know what humanity becomes when threatened. Now they know. We become the thing that empires fear most. We become the end of their story. She stood up and the camera followed her to a window that looked out over Earth's capital city. To the species of the galaxy who live under Imperial rule, I say this: your liberation has begun. To the Empire's leaders, I say this: you were warned. You chose not to listen. Now you will learn why humans are the only species in this galaxy that has never been conquered. The transmission ended, but Helen's words spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species knew that humanity had declared war on the Galactic Empire. Some aliens laughed, just as they had laughed at Admiral Webb. Humans were just one species, they said. What could they do against an empire of thousands of worlds? But other species remembered old stories. Stories about a young species that had appeared in the galaxy only recently, but had never lost a war. Stories about humans who fought like demons when cornered and never gave up, no matter how bad things got. In the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Alpha Centauri, Captain Roy Davis received his orders with a grim smile. His ship, the ISV Retribution, had been disguised as a cargo vessel for 3 years. It had been waiting near the Imperial Supply Depot at Kepler 442b, watching and learning. Now it was time to reveal what it really was. All crew. This is the captain, Roy announced over the ship's speakers. We have received authorization for full combat operations. Battle stations. The cargo ship began to change. Panels slid away to reveal weapon systems that belonged on a battleship. The ship's engines, hidden behind fake cargo pods, came online with a roar that could be heard across the system. The Imperial Depot was defended by 12 warships and thought to be completely safe. It was deep in Imperial space, far from any human colony. The aliens on duty that day had heard about the attacks on human worlds. They were laughing about it over their evening meal when their sensors picked up an energy signature they did not recognize. Unknown vessel, the Imperial commander broadcast. You are in restricted space. Identify yourself or be destroyed. Roy's reply was broadcast on every frequency so that everyone in the system could hear it. This is Captain Roy Davis of the Human Space Navy. I'm here to deliver humanity's answer to your empire's aggression. You wanted to see what we become when threatened. Today you find out. The ISV Retribution opened fire. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the Imperial Depot was gone. The 12 defending ships were gone. Even the asteroids they had used for cover were gone. Roy sent one final message before jumping to hyperspace. Tell your empire that this is just the beginning. We told you we don't stop until it's ashes. We meant it. Across the galaxy, other disguised human ships began revealing themselves. The Empire had thought they knew where all the human forces were. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. 6 months after the Empire's first attack, the galaxy watched in growing fear as the human war machine revealed its true size. Colonel Amy Foster stood on the bridge of her assault ship as it approached Proxima Station. The massive space station hung in orbit around a red giant star, its metal arms reaching out like the legs of a giant spider. It was the Empire's command center for this entire region of space. It was also supposed to be impossible to attack. "Ma'am, we're getting multiple target locks," reported Lieutenant Dan Cooper from his weapons station. "They have over 200 defensive guns aimed at us." Amy smiled. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Her Marines called her the Ice Queen because nothing ever seemed to rattle her. "How many ships are they showing on sensors?" she asked. "Just us, ma'am. One assault transport against the biggest station in the sector." "Good," Amy said. "That means the surprise is still working." She activated her communicator and spoke to the Marines waiting in the transport bays. "Listen up, people. In 5 minutes, we're going to do something that the Empire thinks is impossible. We're going to take Proxima Station with 1 ship and 200 Marines. They have 5,000 defenders and enough firepower to destroy a fleet." She paused, looking out at the station growing larger on the view screen. "They also have something we want. Inside that station are the Empire's communication records for this entire sector. Every order they've given, every species they've enslaved, every planet they've destroyed. We're going to take those records and broadcast them to the galaxy." The Marines cheered, but Amy held up her hand for silence. The Empire has spent 1,000 years telling everyone they're the good guys, that they bring peace and order to the galaxy. Today we show everyone the truth. The attack began with a single shot from Amy's ship, but it was not aimed at the station. Instead, it hit a small asteroid floating nearby. The asteroid exploded, and from its wreckage came dozens of small objects that spread out in all directions. The objects were mines, but not the kind anyone expected. These mines did not explode. Instead, they attached themselves to the station's defensive guns and began eating through the metal with acid that dissolved anything it touched. "What is happening to our weapons?" screamed the station commander, a reptilian alien named Siktar. "Half our guns are offline." His second-in-command, a creature that looked like a walking jellyfish, studied the sensor readings with growing panic. "Sir, there are small devices attached to our weapon systems. They appear to be some kind of corrosive agent. Destroy them." "We cannot, sir. They are too close to our own equipment. If we fire on them, we will destroy our own guns." Amy's ship moved closer to the station, its weapons targeting the remaining defensive systems, but she still did not fire. "All Imperial forces," Amy broadcast on every frequency. "This is Colonel Amy Foster of the Human Marine Corps. You are ordered to surrender immediately." The reply came from Station Commander Skatar himself, his voice full of rage and disbelief. "Human, you dare attack an Imperial command station with 1 ship? I have 5,000 warriors aboard this station. Surrender now or we will capture you and make your death last for days." Amy's reply was calm and professional. "Commander, you misunderstand the situation. I am not attacking your station. I am capturing it. There is a difference." She nodded to Lieutenant Cooper, who pressed a single button on his control panel. Every remaining defensive gun on Proxima Station stopped working at the same time. The lights went out. The artificial gravity turned off. Even the air recycling system shut down. "What did you do?" Seskatar screamed over the radio. 20 years ago, human engineers helped build this station," Amy explained as her ship docked with the station's main airlock. "We installed backup systems in case of emergencies. What you are experiencing now is those systems working exactly as designed." The truth was even simpler than that. Every piece of equipment the Empire bought from human companies came with hidden programs built into their computer systems. Programs that could be activated by a simple radio signal. The Empire had never thought to check for such things. Why would they suspect the primitive humans of such trickery? Amy's Marines poured through the station's corridors. The Imperial defenders were tough fighters, but they were fighting in the dark, without artificial gravity, and with air that was getting thinner by the minute. The battle for Proxima Station lasted 2 hours. When it was over, the station was under human control, and its communication systems were broadcasting across the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," Amy said, standing in the station's main communication center. "I am Colonel Amy Foster. and I am speaking to you from the captured Imperial Command Station at Proxima. Behind me are the Empire's own records of their activities in this sector." She gestured to screens showing documents written in dozens of alien languages. These records show the truth about Imperial rule. They show orders to destroy entire species who refuse to pay taxes. They show plans to enslave children and use them as workers in Imperial factories. They show that everything the Empire has told you about bringing peace and order is a lie. The records scrolled across the screens, showing Imperial orders that would have horrified any civilized being. Orders to poison water supplies on rebel worlds. Plans to use disease weapons against species that resisted. Communications about selling captured aliens as slaves to the highest bidder. The Empire has ruled through fear and lies for 1,000 years, Amy continued. They told you that resistance was hopeless, that anyone who fought them would be destroyed. Today you can see what happens when someone finally fights back. The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy. On Imperial worlds, alien species saw the truth about their rulers for the first time. On free worlds, governments began asking themselves if they wanted to be next on the Empire's list. While Amy was capturing Proxima Station, Admiral Tony Martinez was preparing for an even more impossible task. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UHS Defiance, looking at the tactical display that showed the Imperial shipyards at Vega Prime. The shipyards were the Empire's main source of new warships. They were defended by the Empire's Second Fleet, over 400 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Martinez's fleet had exactly 7 ships. "Sir," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Karen Bell, "we're receiving a transmission from the Imperial Fleet Commander. He's demanding that we surrender immediately." Martinez was an older man with gray hair and scars on his face from a dozen battles. He had been fighting the Empire's forces for most of his adult life, usually in small skirmishes on the edge of human space. "Put him through," Martinez said. The face that appeared on the view screen belonged to Imperial Fleet Admiral Grexelon, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like black leather. His voice was deep and full of arrogance. "Human Commander, I am Admiral Grexelon of the Imperial Second Fleet. You are outnumbered 60 to 1. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick." Martinez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral Grexelon, I am Admiral Tony Martinez of the Human Space Navy. I am here to destroy your shipyards and your fleet. You have 2 choices. You can surrender now and evacuate your personnel, or you can stay and fight. Either way, those shipyards will be scrap metal in an hour." Grexelon's laughter boomed across the communication channel. 7 ships against 400. "Human, your species may be brave, but you are also clearly insane." "We'll see," Martinez said calmly. "Begin the attack." What happened next shocked the Empire and terrified every military commander in the galaxy. The 7 human ships did not charge toward the Imperial fleet like heroic fools. Instead, they spread out in a formation that seemed to make no tactical sense. Then they began firing weapons that the Empire had never seen before. The first Imperial ship to die was the battlecruiser Eternal Victory. It was hit by a beam of energy that passed through its shields as if they were not there. The beam cut the ship in half lengthwise and both halves exploded a second later. What kind of weapon was that? Grexelon screamed at his science officer. "Unknown, sir. Our shields had no effect on it at all." More Imperial ships began dying. The human weapons seemed to ignore every defense the Empire had developed. Shields, armor, defensive screens, nothing worked. "Sir, we've lost 50 ships in the first 5 minutes, reported the fleet's tactical officer. "Whatever weapons they're using, we have no defense against them." Grexelon watched in horror as his supposedly invincible fleet was torn apart by 7 ships that should not have been able to threaten even one of his vessels. "All ships, focus fire on the human flagship," he ordered. "Concentrate everything we have." 400 Imperial ships turned their weapons on Martinez's ship. The amount of firepower they unleashed could have destroyed a small moon. The human flagship's shields absorbed every shot and kept firing back. "Impossible," Grexelon whispered. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, the Imperial shipyards at Vega Prime were gone. The Second Fleet existed only as debris floating in space. A few dozen Imperial ships had escaped by jumping to hyperspace, but the rest were destroyed. Admiral Martinez broadcast a message to the surviving Imperial forces. "This is Admiral Martinez of the Human Navy. Today you learned that numbers do not always win battles. You wanted to know what humanity becomes when threatened. We become the Empire's confidence died at Vega Prime, and what replaced it was something far worse than anger. It was fear. General Scott Baker stood on the observation deck of the UHS Vengeance, watching the planet called Throne grow larger in the viewport. Throne was the Empire's capital world, home to over 50 billion beings from 1,000 different species. It was the heart of Imperial power, protected by orbital fortresses and the largest fleet in the galaxy. Scott was not impressed. "Sir, we have confirmation that all escape routes from the system are blocked," reported his aide, Captain Julie Clark. "The 3rd, 5th, and 7th fleets have taken positions at every hyperspace jump point." Scott nodded without taking his eyes off the planet. He was a big man with hands scarred from years of combat engineering. He had spent his career building things and then blowing them up when the job required it. "What about civilian evacuation?" he asked. "Imperial High Command has forbidden any ships to leave the system," Julie replied. "They're using their own people as shields." That was typical Empire behavior, Scott thought. When cornered, they always hid behind innocent civilians and dared their enemies to fire through them. "Then we wait," Scott said. "This is not a battle. It's a siege. The Empire's leaders can come out and face justice, or they can stay on their planet and starve. Their choice." On Throne's surface, Imperial High Marshal Kethlon stood in the capital's war room, staring at tactical displays that showed the impossible. Somehow the humans had moved 3 entire fleets into position around Throne without being detected. "How many ships do they have out there?" he demanded. "Approximately 800 vessels, sir," his intelligence officer replied nervously. "But that cannot be correct. Our reports say the humans only have 50 ships total." Kethlon was a veteran of 100 campaigns. He had conquered dozens of worlds for the Empire and crushed rebellions across the galaxy. He knew military tactics better than almost anyone alive. None of his knowledge helped him understand what the humans were doing. "They are not trying to invade," he said slowly. "Look at their positioning. They are not preparing for orbital bombardment. They are just waiting." "Waiting for what, sir?" "I don't know, and that terrifies me." The answer came 3 days later, when Captain Linda Hayes piloted her stealth ship Nightfall through the Empire's most secure space. Her target was Draktar, a fortress moon that orbited Throne. Hidden inside Draktar was the Empire's most closely guarded secret. Linda was 28 years old and had been flying military missions since she was 18. She was small and quick, with pilot reflexes that had kept her alive through a dozen impossible missions. Today's mission was the most impossible yet. "Control, this is Nightfall," she whispered into her communicator. "I am approaching the target." Beginning infiltration sequence. Her ship was invisible to Imperial sensors, wrapped in technology that bent light and energy around it like water flowing around a stone. She slipped past defense platforms that could have destroyed a battleship and landed in a maintenance bay deep inside the fortress. Linda's job was not to fight. It was to find information. Intelligence reports suggested that the Empire was building a weapon capable of destroying entire planets, and they planned to use it on Earth. She needed to confirm this and, if possible, learn where the weapon was located. Moving through Draktar's corridors was like walking through a nightmare. The fortress was built like a maze, with passages that led nowhere and rooms that served no purpose except to confuse intruders. The few guards she encountered never saw her coming. Her mission required stealth, not killing. The information she found was worse than anyone had expected. Deep in the fortress's computer core, Linda discovered files that made her blood run cold. The Empire had indeed built a planet-killing weapon. They called it the Starbreaker, and it was powerful enough to crack a world in half. But that was not the worst part. The weapon was already aimed at Earth. The Empire planned to fire it within the week, hoping to end the war by destroying humanity's homeworld. "Control, this is Nightfall," Linda transmitted on an encrypted channel. "I have confirmed the threat. The weapon exists and is targeted on Earth. Sending data package now." The information she had stolen reached human command centers within minutes. President Carter was woken up in the middle of the night to receive the news. "How long do we have?" she asked General Pete Morris, her chief military advisor. "Maybe 5 days, ma'am. The weapon is almost charged, and once it fires, there will be no way to stop the beam." Carter was quiet for a long moment, staring at the reports that showed exactly how the Empire planned to murder every human on Earth. "General, What is the status of our planetary defenses? All systems are online and ready, ma'am. We've been preparing for this possibility for 20 years. Good. Let them fire their weapon. Then show them what happens when someone threatens our home. The Starbreaker fired on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. The weapon was everything Imperial scientists had promised. A beam of pure destruction that could punch through a planet's core and tear it apart from the inside. The energy beam crossed space at the speed of light, carrying enough power to destroy a world. It struck Earth's orbital defense grid with the force of 1,000. Sun's and Earth's defenses did something the Empire had never imagined possible. They caught the beam, a network of satellites. Surrounding Earth absorbed the destructive energy and held it, storing it in containment fields that had been designed by humanity's greatest scientists. For 30 seconds, Earth's orbital grid glowed like a second sun as it processed the incoming energy. Then the grid fired back. The redirected beam followed its original path back to its source, but now it carried twice as much power as before. Human technology had not just absorbed the Empire's ultimate weapon, it had amplified it. Draktar had been a fortress moon, home to millions of Imperial military personnel and their families. When the redirected Starbreaker beam hit it, the moon simply ceased to exist. The explosion was so massive that it created a new star for 3 days, before finally burning out. Admiral Webb's voice reached every corner of Imperial space within the hour. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Space Navy, speaking to the leaders of the Galactic Empire. You have just learned what happens when you threaten Earth directly. Your ultimate weapon has been turned against you, and one of your fortress moons no longer exists. His words were calm, but they carried a weight that made listeners throughout the galaxy feel cold. For 1,000 years you have ruled through fear. You have told every species in the galaxy that resistance is hopeless, that your technology is too advanced and your fleets too powerful to defeat. Today, you learned the truth. The image changed to show the expanding cloud of gas and debris that had once been Draktar. Your ultimate weapon could not even scratch our homeworld. Your greatest fortress was destroyed by its own attack. You are not the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. You are not the most powerful military force. You are not unbeatable. Webb's face reappeared on the screen and his expression was that of a judge pronouncing sentence. You are the past. We are the future. And the future has no place for empires built on the suffering of innocent species. The transmission ended, but its effects spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. On 100 Imperial worlds, species that had been enslaved for generations began to rise up against their oppressors. They had seen the Empire's ultimate weapon fail. They had watched humanity turn Imperial strength against itself. For the first time in 1,000 years, rebellion seemed possible. The Empire still had armies and fleets, but they also had something they had never experienced before. They had doubt. Their leaders began asking questions they had never needed to ask. What if the Empire was not invincible? What if humanity was stronger than they had ever imagined? What if they were fighting an enemy that could not be defeated by conventional means? General Baker watched from his command ship as reports came in from across Imperial space. Revolts on dozens of worlds. Imperial fleets defecting to join the rebels. Government officials fleeing their posts rather than face human justice. Sir, Captain Clark reported, we're getting surrender offers from 17 different Imperial sectors. They want to negotiate terms, Baker shook his head. No negotiations. No terms. They were warned what would happen if they chose war with humanity. The warning was clear. We don't stop until it's ashes. He looked out at the planet throne, where the Empire's leaders were hiding behind their civilian population. Besides, he added quietly, we are not even close to being finished with them yet. 1 year after Chancellor Vextar had delivered the Empire's ultimatum, Admiral Marcus Webb stood once again before a galactic assembly. But this time the meeting was on Earth in humanity's capital city, and the aliens before him wore the look of defeated enemies asking for mercy. The Great Hall was smaller than the Imperial Chamber had been, but it felt more important. Representatives from 500 species filled the seats, but now they were not laughing at the lone human standing before them. They were afraid of him. Webb wore the same uniform he had worn a year ago, but now it carried new decorations. Medals for the victories at New Harmony, Vega Prime, and a dozen other battles that had broken the Empire's power forever. Behind him, President Helen Carter sat at a simple desk. reviewing surrender documents that had been arriving for weeks. Representatives of the former Galactic Empire, Webb began, his voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. 1 year ago you offered humanity a choice. Submit to Imperial rule or face destruction. You laughed when we refused. You attacked our colonies expecting easy victories. He paused, looking at the faces before him. Many were species he had never seen before, refugees from worlds that had been freed from Imperial rule. Today, the Galactic Empire no longer exists. Your fleets are scrap metal drifting in space. Your fortress worlds are under human protection. Your leaders are either dead or waiting to stand trial for war crimes. In the front row, former Chancellor Vextar sat with his hands chained together. The proud alien who had once commanded 1,000 species now looked old and broken. His green skin had turned gray and his glass teeth were cracked from grinding them in frustration. You told us that resistance was hopeless, Webb continued, that your technology was too advanced and your numbers too great for anyone to defeat. You were wrong about everything. President Carter stood up and walked to the podium. She was a small woman, but her presence filled the room. The war is over, she said simply. The Galactic Empire surrendered this morning after their last fleet was destroyed at the Battle of Omega Station. What remains now is to decide what kind of galaxy we will build from the ashes of their tyranny. She gestured to the alien representatives, many of whom were trying not to look at the humans directly. Some of you fought beside the Empire until the very end. Others tried to stay neutral. A few joined humanity's cause when they saw which way the war was going. Today, all of those differences matter less than one simple fact. You are all here alive and free because humanity chose to show mercy. Dr. Lisa Morgan, now wearing the uniform of Director of Galactic Affairs, stepped forward with a data pad in her hands. The technology that destroyed the Empire's fleets was developed over 20 years, she explained. Quantum cascade weapons that unravel matter at the subatomic level. Shield systems that can absorb and redirect any energy attack. Stealth technology that makes our ships invisible to your sensors. She looked around the room, making sure every representative understood her words. We could have used these weapons to conquer the galaxy ourselves. We could have become the new empire, ruling over you just as the Imperials did. Instead, we offer you something the galaxy has never seen before, true freedom. A representative from the Zephyrian Dominion, the same species as the former Chancellor, raised one of his 4 arms. What does humanity want from us? He asked, his voice shaking with fear. Helen Carter smiled, and for the first time it was a genuinely warm expression. We want you to be free, she said. Free to govern yourselves. Free to trade with whoever you choose. Free to live without fear of some empire coming to enslave you. And if we refuse? Asked another representative. Then you refuse, Carter replied. But you will not threaten the peace of this galaxy. Any species that tries to build a new empire, any government that tries to enslave its neighbors, will face the same fate as the Imperials. Webb stepped forward again, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy, but we will not allow anyone else to rule it through fear and oppression. The age of empires is over. What comes next is up to all of us. Former Chancellor Vextar finally found his voice. When he spoke, the words came out as a whisper that the room's audio systems amplified for everyone to hear. Why? He asked. Why show us mercy? We tried to destroy you. We attacked your worlds. We would have killed every human in the galaxy if we could have. Carter walked down from the podium and stood in front of the chained alien. For a moment, the two leaders looked at each other across the space that separated conqueror from conquered. Because that's what separates us from you, Carter said quietly. You ruled through fear. We choose to lead through hope. She turned back to address the full assembly. The human galactic protectorate begins today. Any species that wants our protection can have it. Any world that needs help rebuilding can ask for it. Any government that wants to trade with humanity is welcome. She paused, and her expression grew serious. But understand this clearly. The weapons that destroyed the Empire still exist. The fleets that won this war are still active. If anyone threatens the peace, if any species tries to return to the old ways of conquest and slavery, they will learn what the Empire learned. Which is what? Asked a brave representative from the back of the room. Admiral Webb answered, his voice as calm as it had been in the Imperial chamber a year ago. That humanity keeps its promises. We promised the Empire that we would not stop until it was ashes. We kept that promise. Now we promise the galaxy something different. Peace, freedom, and protection for those who want it. He looked around the room one final time. The choice, as always, is yours. The ceremony lasted 3 more hours. Representatives from dozens of species signed agreements to join the human protectorate. Others chose to remain independent, but agreed to follow basic rules about not enslaving their neighbors or attacking peaceful worlds. When it was over, Webb found himself alone on the observation deck of Luna Station, looking out at the stars. The same stars that had watched the rise and fall of the Galactic Empire now looked down on a galaxy that was learning to be free. Dr. Morgan joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a tired smile. "Do you think it will work?" she asked, handing him one of the cups. "This whole idea of a protectorate instead of an empire?" Webb sipped his coffee and considered the question. In the distance, he could see ships from a dozen different species docked at the station. Former enemies working together, former slaves learning to govern themselves. The empire lasted 1,000 years because people were afraid to fight it, he said finally. Our protectorate will last as long as people choose to be part of it. That might be longer or it might be shorter, but at least it will be their choice. And if someone challenges us, if another species decides they want to be the next galactic empire, Webb's expression did not change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Then they will learn what the Imperials learned. We gave them a warning. We kept our promise. The galaxy is ashes where their empire used to be, and something better is growing in its place. He finished his coffee and set the empty cup on the observation deck's railing. But I don't think that will happen again anytime soon. Everyone saw what happened to the last group that threatened humanity. The message was pretty clear. Morgan nodded and looked out at the peaceful stars. What was the message? Webb was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his words carried the same weight they had carried in the Imperial chamber all those months ago. Don't threaten humanity unless you're prepared to become a cautionary tale. Far below them, on Earth's surface, children from a dozen different species played together in parks that had once been empty. Adults from worlds that had never known freedom learned how to vote in elections and speak their minds without fear. The Galactic Empire was gone, turned to ashes just as humanity had promised. But from those ashes, something unprecedented was growing. Not another empire built on conquest, but a community built on choice. It was not perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was free, and it was protected by beings who understood that some promises once made must never be broken. The age of empires was over. The age of freedom had begun, and in the depths of space, hidden in locations known only to humanity's military commanders, weapon systems that could destroy fleets and crack planets waited in silent readiness, not to conquer, but to protect, not to enslave, but to preserve the freedom that had been bought with the ashes of those who had tried to take it away. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Some warnings should always be taken seriously, especially when they come from humanity.